kind of a local historian. I'm the president of the Polk County Historical Society and have deep roots in this town. So I want to thank the library for hosting this. What a great, nice, air-conditioned, wonderful spot on this hot day. So I'm going to try to tell you my story of the connection between the town of Ockelbo, Sweden, and Stromsburg. So Polk County, like any county in the state, is made up of a lot of different ethnic groups. And so we have Germans and Polish and Bohemian people, even Canadian people in the Shelby area. That's why it's a Canada precinct. But the area from Stromsburg to Osceola, back to Sweet Home, and the Pleasant Home area in the southwestern part of the county, where Polk now is, that was really largely settled by Swedish immigrants. If you were to look at those groups with a microscope, they are not all the same. Those communities were made up of people from different regions in Sweden. Stromsburg was mostly made up of people from Gävleborg, specifically Ockelbo. So Gävleborg, excuse me if my Swedish pronunciation is off. Anders would probably tell me I'm wrong on some of this, but Gävleborg is made up of just Strickland and Hälsingland, and Ockelbo and the port city where most of these people left from, the Gävle, are both in Strickland in Gävleborg. Their regions and their counties and stuff are confusing to me because they're different than how we would say it. So Ockelbo is both a municipality, which I would call it a county, but they don't, and a town. So here's the town of Ockelbo in the municipality of Ockelbo. Lars Janssen-Lax changed his name to Louis Hedstrom, came to Stromsburg from Stromsburg, Ockelbo, Sweden. There is the bus stop in Stromsburg. That's all there is there. Neely and I were able to go there in 2017. If you see the red building on the left side of that picture, that is this building here, which I was told by the researchers is where Louis worked. It was a mill. This was a couple hundred feet away. This meadow is where Lewis's house once stood. And just down the road was his sister and her husband, who became John Buckley Sr. and Martha Buckley. Their 4 sons were very instrumental also in the formation of Stromsburg. They had Louis Hedstrom and Martha had another sister, Christine, who married John Hedblum. The Hedblums, the Chelsons, they also have deep roots in Stromsburg. This bridge, I'm sure it wasn't there at the time, but this beautiful bridge sat between the Hedstrom place and the Buckley place. And if you notice off in the distance, that is the Ockelbo Church. So you went across the bridge and you turned right, and there was a stone wall. That stone wall, behind that stone wall was where the Buckleys lived. We were able to visit a museum that had a soldier's home. So my great-great-grandfather's name was Hans Hansen when he was born. When you joined the military, you got another surname, typically a Swedish word. And so Noid, N-O with the umlauts, J-D, means pleased or satisfied in Swedish. When you got out of the military, you could keep that name, or you could go back to your original surname. He kept it. He was in for 17 years, so that's probably why he kept the name. Notice my head is just a few inches from the ceiling. The doorways hit me at the nose, but they weren't big people. The king mandated that the cabins were all built the same, so they told me, your ancestor's cabin was identical to this. The layout inside, the outside, the whole works, the dimensions of it. They said, this is what it looked like, but we were unable to find where Hans lived. I was a little disappointed in that. We'd already seen the Buckley place. We'd already seen the Hedstrom place. The researchers we traveled with, some of them spoke some English, some didn't. The main gentleman in the group did not. But when he would point at things, it meant, Charles, pay attention, this is important to you. We stopped on the side of the road, saw this barn, he's pointing at it, it's beautiful, the flowers are beautiful, I gotta take a picture. That wasn't what he wanted to show me, because he had lied to me. The Noid place sat in the trees on the other side of that meadow. It's not there anymore, there's nothing there, but for me it was precious. It's probably a couple miles from where Lewis Hedstrom lived, and they homesteaded 2 miles apart in Polk County. So I thought it was pretty cool. We went on a little ways further. This is in Helsingland in Gävleborg, the Church of Katrinaberg. Carl and Helena Hedlund are my 3 times great grandparents, and they were married in that church. If you see here, they had 3 daughters that came to Polk County with their husbands: Christina Berggren, Ella Noid, and Ingley Hillary.
What year did they get married?
They got married in like 1820 or so, I think. Helena was born in 1798. So anyway, their daughters came here. Ingley Hillary, they went through some tragedy. If you go to the Stromsburg Cemetery, there's a stone that says murdered on it. She lost a little boy. I cannot figure out, there's different stories, killed by Indians, accidentally shot, whatever. They chiseled it, murdered in 1878, I believe. And then Ingley died, and the rest of the family moved away. But obviously, all the Berggrens around here and all the Noids are descendants of them. So from there, we traveled around a nice little lake. We had fika, which is a whole other story. If you ever want to hear it, Neely and I can tell you, it was fantastic. And then we walked out into the forest. And in the forest, we found this stone foundation. And they got out my family tree and they said, Helena Hedlund was born here in 1798. I was a little emotional. It was just an incredible experience. And they said, oh, we're not done yet. We went on another couple hundred feet where her grandparents lived. So this is 5 times great grandparents to mine in the 1700s. Built this stone cellar, and you can see the foundation here to the cabin. I crawled down in that cellar and just was in awe that my 5 times great grandparents built that. Now, an interesting thing about this, you saw the church. Well, it's on the other side of that lake. And so they told us those people would travel across that lake with a rowboat to church. And during the winter, they would snowshoe or take a horse and sleigh to go to church, which we thought was just pretty incredible. This entire area, I had a weird thing in my DNA, and this answered it. It's called Finfara. They're all Finnish immigrants. And so I have Finland in my DNA because of these people. So during our travels, we ended up back in Ockelbo for the Midsummer Festival. It was awesome to see authentic Midsummer Festival. And as we saw these things and met these people, I'll just tell you, I really was feeling a personal connection to the community, but also a connection to my town of Stromsburg and there. It just, every person I talked to, it seemed to just grow more and more this connection. And then this gentleman wanted to talk to me. He didn't speak any English. He was one of the musicians there while they were doing the dance, but he found out I was from Stromsburg, and he wanted me to know that the house he lives in is where the Nordberg family lived when they lived in Sweden. They lived in the house he lives in. He did some remodeling, found letters in the wall, from Stromsburg to Sweden. Unfortunately, those letters were mailed here, and the Nordberg family lost them. So we saw beauty like at every turn. And so we're up on a large hill. That lake is where Ockelbo is. This is probably 11 o'clock at night. We were there during midsummer, so the sun never really set. This is the church, I believe, in Amet, which is just outside of Ockelbo. There again, probably 11 o'clock at night. I couldn't sleep, so we were out taking pictures. The flowers in Ockelbo were just incredible. The garden that supplied our hostel that we stayed at We ate food from there. The rivers, everything was just beautiful. And I got to thinking, man, why would my people leave this? This is crazy. And so, why would they leave a beautiful place like this? Well, the researchers gave me insight into that. The population in Sweden had doubled from 1750 to 1850. So there's a lot more mouths to feed. Owning land was out of reach for most of them. The land was bought up, they weren't going to get it. Occupations were limited. You could farm, you're going to farm for somebody else. You could work in the forest, you could be in the military, or you could be like a number of my ancestors and be a charcoal burner. These people would leave their homes, go out into the forest, cut trees down, build these giant pits, start fires, and then they would smother them. And they would have to tend to all this until that wood was dehydrated in charcoal form. And then it was taken and loaded on wagons and eventually on a train that went to the steel mills. Now, when it got to the other end of the line at the steel mill, if there was no money, they didn't get paid. They told me these people were like your cotton pickers, is what they told me, meaning they were slaves. Now, sometimes they did get paid, but they had to buy everything in the company stores, kind of like our coal miners. Mm-hmm. And so it was a horrible occupation. If you did it very long, you ended up with kind of a black lung disease like our coal miners. People would have trees fall on them. They would get cut by axes. It was very, very dangerous. My great-grandma Beta Noyd, her dad died the day she was born. He was a charcoal burner, and they think that he died in one of these accidents, whatever it was. I've never been able to find out, but I never will find out. But anyway, terrible occupation. So another thing that they told me was the state church was very strict. You couldn't have a Bible study in your house. Everything had to be ran through the state church. People were looking for religious freedom. So, in my opinion, why did these people leave? Opportunity. To me, that's the big word, the opportunity to feed their families, opportunity to own their own land, opportunity for religious freedom. Other things too, but to me, those are the big ones. So, if you look at this statue, and I don't know if people in the back can see it or not, this statue is in Sweden. There's a couple of them around the United States that are very similar, that are kind of replicas of this statue. But if you notice, the man in the picture is looking out, and his wife is looking back. Okay, so the story that is told here, he is looking at that opportunity. I need opportunity to feed my family, opportunity to survive. She's looking back at probably parents she's leaving behind, siblings, friends, likely had buried babies there. Mm-hmm. Things that she couldn't put in that box that was going on the ship, things that were very precious to them. They were very limited on what they could bring. And so, that's the story that's told from the statue is opportunity and what are we leaving behind.
Now, Charlie, is our little statue up there in
the square?
Yeah. Well, it was in this. Yeah, did it get moved? Yeah, it got moved to
it's in the square. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is it modeled after that?
No.
Okay.
No. So when we went to Gävle, I walked out to where the harbor goes out into the Baltic Sea. And I looked out over that and I thought, man, could I have done it? I didn't have the inspiration they did. I have the opportunity. I've had the opportunity my whole life. And so, I see why they did it. I just don't know if I could have. So they went from Gävle, and you can see where that's at on the map, and down around by Denmark, and then off to New York. So they landed on Ellis Island and were processed under the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, right? No. I hear that all the time. My ancestors went by the Statue of Liberty, and they were processed at Ellis Island. Well, from 1855 to 1890, Castle Garden was the immigration spot in New York. Now called Castle Clinton. It was originally a military fortress. And so the Statue of Liberty wasn't even dedicated until 1886, so none of my Swedish ancestors went by the Statue of Liberty or to Ellis Island. Neely took my son on a school trip to New York, 2017. This is my middle child, Isaac. He looks very happy to do this for me, but this photo was taken 149 years after Hans and Illinois went through that gate. So, the first major ship records that I've found that have a connection to Stromsburg was the Carolina from Gävle, arrived October 27th, 1856. They left Gävle 100 days before that. So they were 100 days at sea. The green highlighted area is the Buckley family and Lewis Hedstrom and his wife and his sister, who ended up marrying John Hedblum, who was also on the ship. The blue is Louis Berggren. His father and siblings were on the same ship. The next major, I should mention, this is from a book that the library has called The People of the Red Barns, that has ship records in it. Carl and Helena Hedlund and their daughters came, and their son came on the Jenny from Gävle in 1857. So the main areas that I'm going to point out, I guess, Galva, Illinois, named after Gävle, the port city, New Sweden, Iowa, and then of course Stromsburg. So Galva is in Henry County, Illinois. Henry and Knox County, Illinois, almost every community in that area seemed to have some Swedish connection. Wapala County and Jefferson County Jefferson is where New Sweden is. Both of those counties had a lot of Swedish immigrants. So in Henry County, Bishop Hill, the Bishop Hill colony, was established in 1847. My good friend Bob Greenwald would say they were a communist community, and they really were. The colony, they shared everything. They did all the work together. When Galva was being formed in 1854, they bought up a lot of what the town was going to be. The Bishop Hill people did. It was a railroad community. The railroad had gone through there already, and it was a way to get Swedish immigrants there. And so there's a real connection between, they're really close together anyway, but Bishop Hill and Galva are really connected. Kewanee, Altoona, all those towns had a Swedish ancestor or Swedish immigrants there. Galesburg, Illinois, if you see, the railroad goes to Galesburg and then it goes on to Burlington, Iowa. Burlington was actually formed around 1820. It was a fur traders stop. 1833, it was officially established as a town. It became kind of a port of entry to Iowa for the Swedish immigrants. There was a ferry there, eventually a bridge for the railroad. So around 1870, these people had been there for a while. Around 1870, I think the land was pretty much getting bought up in that area. And so more immigrants are coming, more are coming. We got to move on. And Louis Hedstrom was starting to have some health problems. He was looking for a little bit drier climate. And so he volunteered to be the representative that went on to Omaha to the land office. And at the land office, they said, there's a great spot out in Polk County along the Blue River. So he traveled out here, saw what is now Stromsburg, fell in love with it, said it's the place to build a town. And so went back and the Stromsburg Town Company was formed. The Buckleys and him and some others from Bishop Hill and Galva. Anyway, this seal, this is an interesting thing, is on the oldest letter I've seen in Polk County. And unfortunately, when Stromsburg High School consolidated, a lot of stuff got thrown. And I found this in a trash basket. It is a letter from 1872 when the town company was asking the county to set up the school district. And so it's the only reference I've ever seen outside of the history book to the town company, but I was able to, we ran it through the school board and it's they didn't know what to do with it, so the county historical society has it. So anyway, so that town company operated in Galva until 1877 when it finally moved to Stromsburg. So on to Iowa. New Sweden was formed in 1845. And anyone who's familiar with Swedholm, I kind of say this is Swedholm times 3. So in about a half mile, there's 3 churches. There was the Baptist church and cemetery, there was the Lutheran church and cemetery, and the Methodist church and cemetery. All Swedish. And that town was just north of the town of Lockridge. There again, they came through Burlington, and the railroad would have gone right by there, likely would have been on the train. Ottumwa was actually established in 1844, and it was not a Swedish community, but by the 1850s, almost all the businesses downtown were ran by Swedes. Just west of town was the Church of Munterville. There again, my Swedholm reference, it's very similar to Swedholm. It's a church and cemetery and a few houses. So this is the New Sweden Lutheran Church. Still there. Neely and I have been over there. This is the New Sweden Methodist Church. Their church burned down. They rebuilt it at some point. Obviously a newer building, but they have a cemetery as well. And then, we'll see if I can get this to work.
I'm in Jefferson County, Iowa, just north of the town of Lockridge.
Oh, my volume's not coming through.
Significance to this area in relation to Stromsburg. The site that I'm standing at is where the New Sweden Baptist Church once stood. There were 3 churches in New Sweden. You can see off in the distance, that's the New Sweden Lutheran Church. And on the other side of that is the New Sweden Methodist Church. Now, the New Sweden Baptist Church no longer is here because most of the congregation packed up and came to Stromsburg in the 1870s. You can see there are some stones. I would assume there's a lot more stones here, people buried here than there are stones. So the community started here in the late 1840s, and through the 1850s, a large amount of Swedes immigrated to this area. You can see there's one stone off here in the distance, and it has some historical significance to a lot of people in Polk County and the Stromsburg area. You can see, I'll zoom in on it here in a second. The man that's buried here is Johann Berggren. And it says he came to America in 1856 and he died in 1863. Now, this is Louis Berggren's father. And Louis and Christina came to Stromsburg and have a lot of descendants in the Polk County area. Christina, her parents were Carl and Helena Hedlund, and she had 2 sisters. One of her sisters was married to my great-great-grandfather, Hans Noyd. They were the reason that the Noids came to southeastern Iowa, and all of those people came to the Stromsburg area in the 1870s together.
Sorry, the volume didn't work very good there. So if you didn't hear that, so that Baptist church pretty much, they pretty much all came to Stromsburg. And so that's why there's no church there anymore. So on to Wapello County, the village of Munterville. I know there's others here that have Stromsburg connection, but I'll just tell you that Louis Berggren had land there and Hans Noyd had land there. They both came to Polk County in 1873. This statue is actually at Munterville at the church. It's a Swedish immigrant monument. I thought it was kind of cool. So the founding fathers of Polk County, some of the first immigrants that came here. You can see the Lewis Hedstrom homestead, John Buckley Jr., Andrew Buckley, Peter Buckley. Andrew was an interesting guy. They called him Cook Buckley. He cooked for all the immigrants. A lot of them stopped at his cabin. He would help them get supplies and help them get established. He had a well. People would walk miles to get water before they were able to get a well drilled. So here is my best attempt at, there's probably more. And there are more outside. This is the Stromsburg precinct. So all the red spaces are Ockelbo people. Almost all of Stromsburg. This section down here, Charles Morrill had. This little parcel here, Charles Morrill had. And then John Eckley, who was also a Swede, but not from Ockelbo. He had this piece. But almost all the rest of it was people from that community. Like I said, there's more people west from Ockelbo and north and east a little bit too, but I just wanted to show the Stromsburg precinct to make my case for the connection here. You probably can't see this in the back, but as the town was laid out, we have the Hedstrom edition. The Nordberg edition is where Peter Nordberg homesteaded. Buckley's, that Eckley I was talking about is here. And so John Frawley was Lewis Hedstrom's son-in-law, and then Charles Morrill had all this. So I was gonna mention just some of the names, and I know there's more, I'm just throwing some of them out there, that some of these might be familiar to you, that came from Ockelbo. Hedstrom, Buckley, Nordberg, S.F. Johnson, Sundberg, Berggren, Erickson, Busby, Nyberg, Ostrom, Philman, Hedman, Gestreen, Nordland, Hubert. They were from the Gävleborg area, mostly from Ockelbo. So, you want to know, if you want to research more, I just want to put a plug in here. The Stromsburg Library has a great collection of local history books. They have this book, The People of the Red Barns, is very hard to find. I have a copy. They have a copy. I've seen one in Iowa. It's a great resource. It has ship records, and they have it in multiple ways. So the library is a great place to come if you want to do some research. I also want to mention that a few years ago, the Polk County Historical Society and the 4 libraries in the county digitized all the local papers in microfilm. And so now that is on a website. We also scanned all the history books of the county that we could find. And those are all on that website as well. And this website, I can share it with you, but it's on the screen there. Now, since then, newspapers.com has done kind of the same thing, but that's a paid site. This is free, so.
The papers go up to 2021 now.
Yeah, and just this last year, we were able, with the cooperation of Polk County News, we were able to get the papers updated to 2021. So from the earliest papers there's some late 1870s up to 2021. So I guess I want to throw this out there. If people have connections to Ockelbo, Gävleborg, and you want to share them with me, or if you have questions, I posted my email address up here. So it was kind of neat to me. So I was very intrigued that my ancestor and Lewis Hedstrom and the Buckleys were so close together. And of course, they've been in that community for hundreds of years. But I was able to see when I was there, Hans and Lewis Hedstrom were fairly closely related. And so there was probably a reason they lived so close together. But anyway, so I hope I made the case for the connection between Ockelbo and Stromsburg. And thank you guys for coming today.